Hello everyone, this is Aegon of Astora, and welcome back to my casual playthrough of Dark Souls. This is episode 16, being recorded on Tuesday, August 25th, the same day that I recorded episode 15, and I hope that all of you are having a fantastic day today. And we started here for a very specific reason, and that is this fella over here. Hey friend, I haven't seen you since Anor Londo.
Oh, hello there. I'm glad to see you alive. You have done well, indeed you have. You've a strong arm, strong faith, and most importantly, a strong heart. I am in awe, really. Yes. What do you think? Why not join me as a warrior of the sun, righteous knights, guardians of all that is good, in the name of the Lord of Sunlight? Only if it would please you, of course. Well?
How could anyone turn down that kind of flattery? Sure.
Oh, magnificent. I knew you would fancy it. Then join the Covenant. Here, stay still for a moment. And there we are. Now, just say a prayer at the altar of sunlight, right there. Then you shall know the brilliance of our sun.
And so, I don't know how much sun broing we're gonna do, but I really wanted this gesture, so yeah. It's funny that he doesn't teach you the gesture himself, that instead he tells you to sit at the altar to learn the gesture.
Oh, hello there. Exhilarating, is it not? The power of the sun. I am blessed to have found such a brave companion.
Way to make me feel guilty for what I've decided to do with this quest line. And that is, in part on the basis of what I said in the previous episode, about how linking the fire isn't so much, not that becoming a Dark Lord is a very happy ending either, but he's going to find his son, and he's not going to link the fire. And I'm hesitating to even explain and justify that, but really it comes down to that's a much more dramatic ending to his questline than is summoning him to defeat Lord Gwyn, who may or may not be his father. I'm sorry, because time is convoluted. I haven't yet read your comments from the previous episode when I asked everyone to chime in as to whether or not they think that he is the son of Lord Gwyn. But we'll have to wait until we get our hands on his gear before we can get our hands on the item descriptions and talk about it a little bit more. But yeah, as you know, is Souls community gospel, I guess you could say. He's one of my favorite NPCs. And so I feel really bad sealing his fate the way that I am, but really, there's no other alternative in the context of this playthrough. Unlike in Bloodborne, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out which gesture to replace for Praise the Sun. And I guess it'll have to be point forward. There we go. Beautiful. But yeah, I can't really justify it, but neither of his endings are particularly happy endings, really, when you think about it. But yeah. Sorry, Solaire. You're going to... Yeah, we'll just leave that for now, and we'll talk about Solaire a little bit more later on. So I did make a list. I'm not entirely sure what it is that we're going to be doing this episode, but I did make a list of the loose ends, so to speak, gameplay loose ends that we need to tie up. In addition to, the 2 or possibly 3 comments I want to get to in this episode. And this first loose end is going to require my attention commentary-wise, so we're going to go deal with that before I read out the first comment that I want to address. Off camera, in between the last episode and this episode, I farmed these guys not a lot, like a fair bit, but not a huge amount. And I was, thankfully, able to get my hands on what it was I wanted, and that is a Silver Knight shield. Shield of the Silver Knights of Anor Londo. A flowing canal is carved deep into its face. The Silver Knights stayed behind in Anor Londo to defend the illusory goddess, and their shields are blessed with her divine protection. That's another loose end. We need to speak with the Dark Moon Knightess, and we will do just that in a little bit. So funny that the armor set, which you pick up in a chest in that room right there, doesn't mention the illusory nature of Guinevere, because of course you would have yet to meet her at that point. But if you go through the work of farming and you get the Silver Knight shield, it comes right out and says to defend the illusory goddess. So very interesting. And it says that their shields are blessed with her divine protection, but of course I don't know if there are any shields with divine auxiliary effects in the game, but as you can see, there's nothing there. So I don't know what to think about that. I did also, and this is not the Silver Knight spear that that one invader gave us in the depths. This one actually dropped on its own. And the Silver Knight straight sword as well. So it was, quite a fruitful farming run. The Silver Knights of Anor Londo guard the city using this beautifully slender weapon. Its chain attacks, in which the wielder takes great advancing steps and makes use of his body weight, are deadly, even in single hits. So all I did was get my humanity up to 10, which you can see in the upper left. So we don't have much humanity left, but we do have access to, we have the Lord Vessel, we can warp to the depths, and just farm the rats there until we have a better option available. So, and then we did also, of course, equip the Covetous Cold Serpent Ring. So, I was fortunate enough to have just enough item discovery to be able to get all the things I wanted in a very short amount of time, while I was waiting for the commentary track from the previous episode to process and render. So this room is very interesting, and it's my understanding, and I don't remember where the heck I read this. Otherwise, you all know me well enough to know that I try my best to, give credit where it's due. But almost more importantly, I want to, if I'm going to discuss something like this, I want to at least have some evidentiary basis for it. And for this room, I sadly have none other than my memory of reading somewhere that this is apparently supposed to be Smo's room. And maybe, so one of the stops we're going to go on today is we're going to visit with Dorn Hall of Xena, who should be selling Smo's armor for us. And maybe that will give us a clue about this, but as you can see, and there's some debate about this, I think it might have been in Franz, A German Spy's Rust and Relaxation playthrough. So I'm going to have to look through some of his videos to see if I can find it in there. But the debate I recall there being was whether or not these things here... Now let me pull up my binoculars. So that apparently this is Smo's room. That's one thing. And the second thing is apparently Smo eats his victims. And so these things that have really low quality texture, so that doesn't help at all. But apparently these are either bones of Smo's victims, or they could be scrolls. I'm inclined to think that they're bones. They don't really look like scrolls at all, and insofar as this is Smo's room, I'm not entirely, like, I somewhat doubt, and maybe that's judging a book by its cover, sure, but I doubt that Smo is this active a reader, where there's just scrolls everywhere, and scrolls inside of these closed boxes as well. And who puts scrolls in a box that has dirt on the bottom? I guess the next question would be who puts bones in a box that has dirt in it, but that seems to make more sense than scrolls, because if you're putting scrolls in boxes full of dirt like this, then yeah, they'd be in rough shape, although I guess if these are indeed scrolls, they're in pretty rough shape. So I don't remember the terms of the debate, but yeah, Smo. And where's the dirt go after you hit it? Oh well. Smo's not the most wholesome of characters. And so whether or not Smo was in on this or not is another open question, because I assume that Smo wouldn't, even in his normal form, wouldn't be able to fit through that fireplace. But this secret room here would seem to belong to Bishop Havel, the Rock. And how do we know that? I'm looking first at the chains here. We see that they're curled towards the back of the chest so that it's safe. There are 4 with the chains curled to the back, and a 5th one with the chain facing the front of the chest. So we have 4 real chests and a mimic. So we have Havel's set, finally. His Great Shield and the Dragon Tooth. So let's have a look at that. Cleared out some of my armor, upgraded the Silver Knight set as well. Oh, I meant to put this away, but... Havel's armor, which, worthy of note, in Dark Souls 1, it can't be upgraded. And there are a few sets like that. The stone set, I believe, is another one. Armor worn by Havel the Rock's warriors. Carved from solid rock, its tremendous weight is matched only by the defense it provides. Havel's warriors never flinched nor retreated from battle. Those unfortunate enough to face them were inevitably beaten to a pulp. Yeah, so the same for all this, just save for different line breaks and singular and plural forms. Then we also have the Dragon Tooth. Created from an everlasting Dragon Tooth, legendary great hammer of Havel the Rock. The Dragon Tooth will never break, as it is harder than stone, and it grants its wielder resistance to magic and flame. How does it accomplish that? I've never used this weapon in Dark Souls 1, so I don't know if that's just flavor text. It doesn't actually have any impact on gameplay, and I don't think we have enough strength to wield it. It requires 40... Oh, we got 30 strength. Yeah, we can wield it. So I am seeing in the upper left a increase in defense. Okay, so it said magic and flame, so 202, 203, and when we unequip it, yeah, actually it does. So if you look in the upper left, the icon appears and disappears. So 202 and 203, and then 182, 183. That I never actually noticed, because again, I've never used that weapon in Dark Souls 1. So that's very interesting. So we have the Mimic here once again. And so whomever's secret room this was, they clearly were hiding things. So first of all is the fact that it's a secret room. And it doesn't say that Havel himself wore this armor, but if we're to believe that the NPC that we fought who dropped Havel's ring, this ring was named after Havel the Rock, Lord Gwyn's old battlefield compatriot. Havel's men wore this ring to express faith in their leader and to carry a heavier load. And this one only says that the armor is worn by Havel the Rock's warriors. It doesn't say that it was worn by Havel the Rock. So that could imply that this room belonged to one of Havel's men, but the Dragon Tooth doesn't mention Havel's men. It says specifically legendary Great Hammer of Havel the Rock. So if indeed Havel didn't wear Havel's set, then maybe he set up this room and included in it this set worn by his men as sort of an undercover disguise of sorts. Either way, I think that that's the armor that Havel wore, whether throughout the story or towards the end, and that this is Havel's room. Don't really have all that much basis for that, beyond one of my favorite lore videos of all time I believe it's by Terramantis. And yeah, I'll leave a link in the description just in case there's anyone who hasn't actually seen it, but it's a very speculative video written from Havel's perspective, as though Havel were keeping a diary of everything that was happening. And ever since I've seen that video, I've been more or less, that's more or less been how I viewed Havel's story. Incredibly well-made video, really fun to watch, and so maybe that, or almost certainly that's influenced my opinion of the story, but yeah. I've not heard many other compelling alternatives or debunkings of what's there beyond the fact that it's merely speculative. But so remember, the first layer of secrecy is the room. The room is secret. The second layer of secrecy is the fact that there's an occult club in here, or that the occult club was contained within a mimic chest. So a simple wooden club, this simple bladeless strike weapon is effective against most foes, is easily handled, and can break the guard of a shield. However, a single miss makes one wide open, so timing and proximities are crucial. So there's nothing specific, that's just the item description for the normal club. So why is it important? Well, because it's an occult club. And if you look down here, determines the strength of bleeding, poison effects, and divine/occult effects targeting specific foes. So the divine effect works against basically skeletons in the catacombs. I can't really think of many other applications of it. In the catacombs and in the Tomb of the Giants in Nito's boss room. Effective for, overriding the resurrections of the pyromancers down there. For occult, on the other hand, which you can see the 110 with the black circle, occult is a status effect that deals extra damage against the gods. So for one reason or another, Havel, or one of Havel's men potentially, but I believe it's Havel, had it in for the gods. And, in the city of the gods, in the keep of the gods, was seemingly preparing for an assassination of sorts. So very, very interesting stuff there. Okay, so before we get anything, I just need to take a drink here. Before we get into any dialogue or anything, I'm going to read out the main comment I'm going to be addressing today. And I believe it was from Dima Parachute, but for some reason, sorry, let me have a look here. Yep, for some reason, even though for every other comment I have a name there, I for some reason don't have one for Dima Parachute, but I'm 99% certain it's Dima Parachute. If not, I apologize, and I will correct myself in the video itself. So Dima Parachute writes, "So Aegon, as a teacher, how do you feel about all this learn shaming taking place?" He is frankly worried, Dima Parachute that is, because it becomes obvious that people will never want to learn anything. So am I correct to assume that this is the same kind of logic by people who have power? It's sort of, and this is a quote, a hypothetical quote, I guess. Quote, "We got there first, so we will shoot down anyone who tries to climb to our heights," end quote, and constantly shame them for taking first steps, learning, or trying to get anywhere. At my age, and this is Dima Parachute writing still, I picked up sound engineering, learned and acquired motorcycle license, learned home improvement and renovated, helped my friend build a recording studio, was forced to learn legal law to help another friend, trying to learn programming now, reading up on astronomy the past few years, but essentially I am a noob and a casual at those things. I am like a scrub, so what? I should give up? I should just fire up some video game and forget about my life, and just focus on getting more kills than some other guy. How will we ever get anywhere in life if we don't enjoy being noobs at something? So I'll say first and foremost what I said in the comment section, and that is I'm pretty sure that Dima Parachute knows where I stand on this, and that is firmly on the side of, or firmly against anyone who, so cavalierly describes people as casuals in a pejorative sense, or, someone who sends an email or sends a message to someone after a fight or after a duel in PvP and says, like, "Get good, casual," or something like that. And yeah, so while I'm firmly against those things, and I suppose this is an occupational hazard of being an academic, I do try to see if I can understand why it is those things happen from the perspective of those individuals, whether or not I disagree with the things they're saying, and in this case I do. Okay, I often screw up that jump, so I wanted to make sure I didn't miss it. From the perspective of the people who, in Dark Souls, who will send someone a nasty message after they beat them in a PvP matchup, I very much disagree with that mindset and that type of behavior, but the way I see it is that Dark Souls, the Souls games in general, are, and we, because we're so enmeshed in it, can tend to forget how small and how seemingly insignificant we are in terms of numbers versus, even a game like Destiny. And so in a way, I can understand the anxiety that some players feel, and I felt it myself as well, whereby with each successive game that comes out, and there was a video, I think it was in my Scholar of the First Sin playthrough, where I went on and on about the potential, that we might be concerned about the fact that another Souls game is coming out, and I believe at the time it was Dark Souls 3 was the rumor. And, the concern is that we'll wind up being these will be huge fans of this franchise that was once amazing and very small and had a very close-knit community, but then we'll find ourselves with, successive game releases that aren't of especially high quality, so, a Call of Duty-fication of the Souls games, and with that, a corresponding decrease, a dumbing down of the mechanics of the game to cater to all of these new players, and to further make accessible the Souls games so that it can make more money. And so on the one hand, I very much understand the anxiety that goes along with that. And so in the context of the Souls games in particular, I think whether or not the individuals who engage in that type of behavior, whether or not they know or they're aware or conscious of the fact that they're acting that way, I think that part of the reason for that is that they almost see it subconsciously or unconsciously as their duty to keep the community small, to keep it tight-knit. And that, the way that they go about that is obviously, in some cases, reprehensible. And I believe Dima Parachute made this comment in reference to the fact that I seem to have the worst luck when recording with PvP. I very rarely seem to ever have an invasion where, and the first invasion in the previous episode was a good example of, hey, that was actually a really good fight. I was bested by that person. That was great. But then the next fight happened, and I got a, well, what is it at the end? And so while I didn't get any hate mail or anything like that, it's just one of those things that I seem to have really bad luck while recording in terms of who invades me and what type of PvP happens.
Incoming enemy fighters. Prepare for launch.
But yeah, in general, so speaking more broadly now, not specific to the Souls games, I think part of that is, and I'm trying to just puzzle out in my head how generalized I want to make this, but certainly it has something to do with neoliberalism and the corresponding idea of the neoliberal subject. And so for those who aren't familiar, I have talked about it in the past, but neoliberalism is essentially the idea of economic liberalism. So it has nothing to do with liberalism as it's known in the popular consciousness as being left-wing. To be neoliberal is to be far to the right, whereby you want to disembed the economy, you want to return the economy to its pre-World War II state. So that is also to say that you want to abolish the welfare state. And the neoliberal subject, as it's envisioned, or as it was argued by Michel Foucault, probably my favorite academic ever, a French philosopher from Paris, unfortunately deceased in, I believe, the late 90s. But Michel Foucault described this as and of course I'll put a link in the description if anyone wants to read more about it, but Michel Foucault described the neoliberal subject as homo economicus. So that is to say that we're no longer under neoliberalism, we're no longer homo sapiens who, have emotions and are humans and aren't always rational. Instead, we are conceived of as being rational economic beings who will always make decisions that are in our, rational decisions that are in our economic best interest. So everything is a cost benefit. All decisions are made. Let me just say it like this. All decisions are made with a cost benefit analysis. If the benefit outweighs the economic cost, then you make, it's an affirmative decision. If the economic cost outweighs the economic benefit, it's a negative decision. So, of course, that completely ignores a number of fundamental truths about what it is to be a human and live in a society. Namely, or one thing being that we're humans, we have emotions, we don't always make rational decisions. But more importantly, that, and on a related note, that we live in communities, we live in families, we don't exist on our own. And so, and this is me really generalizing about your question, so I apologize if I've lost you along the way, but I'm getting near the end. So there exists this mindset, not only in Dark Souls, but just more generally, that people exist in a vacuum. That everything you do, all of your successes, all of your failures, are only your responsibility. And so if you think about it, under neoliberalism, under a, political project whereby you want to, whereby the goal for this project is to restore class power to pre-World War II levels, to abolish the welfare state, and to set up the system in such a way where the rich get richer and everyone else just has to fend for scraps. The best possible way of going about that is glorifying individual responsibility, of making it seem as though every single person is in control of their own destiny. When in reality, we all are born and we all go through life restricted by conditions of possibility. I'm a, white male. I was born, thankfully, with very good genes. I guess I'm relatively smart. I'm not bad looking. And so my conditions of possibility, much more plentiful. I have a much wider range of potential things that I could have done and that I have done in my life thanks solely to the fact that I was born white, a male, someone of above average intelligence, and perhaps above average looks. And so not everything I've done, and also of growing up with a fantastic family as well, and so much of what I've done is, yes, is as a result of my own personal hard work, but so much of what I've done was made possible to begin with by the fact that I had a loving family, that I'm a white male, and, that I live in the place that I do. And so that is kind of the general phenomena. When you see people blaming others for, if you're such a lazy welfare person, you should get a job, or you should go and you should, if you're jealous of rich people, you should go and, come up with an idea that is better, and you should start your own business. And what all of that is ignoring is that there is no equality of opportunity. It's a complete myth. Because and there are exceptions to every rule, yes. And that's why in the media you hear more often than not about the exceptions, about the people who, pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and lifted themselves up into the middle class or the upper class or whatever. But the overwhelming majority of people who are rich simply because they were either born into money or they were born into favorable conditions of possibility. And so this attitude has sort of filtered down, and it's become kind of the new common sense in our society, whereby quite simply everyone is depicted and everyone conceives of themselves as earning every single thing they have, because of course it's pathological to rely on other people for help. And so when someone says get good, they don't mean go online and look at strategy guides. They don't mean go online and watch videos. They mean that you have to earn it yourself, because that's what I did, because I'm strong and independent. And I think a lot of this also has to do with certain gender tropes as well, about manliness and being a man, and what that's supposed to mean, when in actuality, and the inverse is true as well, what women should and shouldn't do. And female gamers often get a whole lot of trouble because simply they were born by accident as a female. And it's bullshit, it's not fair, it's nonsense, and that is why, all of these reasons are why I do what I do, and why I'm going to be doing what I'm going to be doing for a living, is that, I care deeply about tearing down misconceptions that I think hurt people. And so, to answer your question in the most roundabout, micro and then super macro scale, and then returning back to the original question, people send shitty messages like that, and they behave in that crappy way in general, in the context of the Souls game, because unconsciously they want to keep the community small, and in general because they have a misconception of what it is to be an individual that lives in society, that they've learned their whole life, and it's reinforced day in, day out through the media and everything else, that you have to earn everything you get on your own. And so people get this shitty, childish attitude that, I earned it, so the other person should too. And obviously I don't agree with that, and that's why a large part of this playthrough has been me showing things that you can do to get through the game easier, because any additional people that get into the Souls game in games is, in my opinion, a good thing. But yeah, I've rambled on long enough, so I hope that answers your questions. But in short, I think we should all continue learning things. I teach basically everything to myself that I haven't learned in school. I learned how to video edit by myself, but at the same time, and that took a long time, I really sucked at it at first. I actually started learning when I was 16, 15, something like that. I'm 29 now, so yeah, but at the same time, I've learned lots from other people, and I'm proud to say that. You can learn certain things on your own, but what the hell kind of life is it if you have to rely on yourself for everything? For me, that's not a life worth living. Hi, Xena, or Dornhall of Xena, whatever your name is. Did you enjoy my rambling speech about neoliberalism? and hyper-individualism.
Aye, Shamai. I didn't expect to meet anybody here. I suppose great minds think alike, eh? I'm afraid...
God, he's so, like, he won't friggin' talk to us unless we buy something. Okay, so he sells the Master Key. He only does this when he returns to Firelink. So after you've defeated... I believe it's Ornstein and Smo that you need to defeat before he comes here. But and we've already looked at the crystal stuff he has. But this is why we came here, for the armor and the lore. Excuse me. Helm of Smo, the Executioner, protector of the cathedral at the Forsaken City of Anor Londo. It offers extremely high defense and can be worn by humans, but not without great difficulty. Sorry, I have some gas. Okay, so not nearly as much lore as I'd hoped. So the Iron Golem's gear. Head of the Iron Golem, guardian of the ancient Sense Fortress, slayer of heroes who ventured forth to Anor Londo. Without its core, it is a mere hunk of iron, and can be equipped as solid protective gear, but its immense weight hinders stamina recovery. Cool, so we'll be...
Well, that is a shame then. But no matter. No, not to worry. Come back again. I'm always available. Not every trade was meant to be. There'll be more in store for us. Someday. Sometime.
You are so pushy. And you see that when you aggro him, he has crystal stuff. But yeah, we'll come back to him later when he has more armor for us. But for now, yeah, we didn't really learn as much about Smo as I'd hoped we would. Okay, the next comment I have is from Jerks Without Borders, who pointed out very kindly that the Bereniki Knights, and so this was in reference to, I believe it was episode 12 or 13, when I was puzzling over the pronoun use and the singular and plural form in the item description for the Bereniki Knights. And so Jerks Without Borders writes, the Bereniki Knights / Knight of Bereniki ambiguity is a translation quirk. Japanese doesn't always specify if something is singular or plural. So Knight of Bereniki and Knights of... I lost my spot. So Knight of Bereniki and Knights of Bereniki are used interchangeably. Obviously, Knights of Bereniki is correct since there's more than one, although from memory, Bereniki is actually supposed to be the name of their unit, rather than where they came from. So very interesting. And that's something that I've always struggled with in trying to determine how much or how little I should rely on the English item descriptions, especially when there's ambiguity involved. But it's always interesting when there's something that's really confusing. I think that for me is at least the best time to go and look and say, okay, like, this is how we should interpret it. But at a certain point, you wind up just splitting hairs nonstop. And up here we have the Undead Dragon. And I had no freaking idea about this lip up here. That you could just walk right up and cheese the Undead Dragon from up here. I was watching the Franz, a German Spy, has a couple friends, and that's from where I discovered it, called Bitter Bits. And they were, I don't know if it was a playthrough, but there was an episode in one of their Dark Souls Let's Play videos, whether or not it was a full playthrough, I can't recall, where they walk down here and he's like, yeah, I'm going to show everyone something that even if you've been playing the game for hundreds of hours, you probably don't know about this. And he walked up there, and initially when he said that, I was incredibly skeptical. But then when he came up here, I was like, oh my god, I actually didn't know about that. And so if you're not in the mood to bother, dealing with the Undead Dragon's poison attacks, you just do this. So yeah, that makes it a fair bit easier. Because we did want to get our hands on the Dragon Crest Shield and the Astora's Straight Sword. Because as you can tell, we're in almost full Astora gear right now. The longsword is really the only thing that's not from Astora that we're wearing. Dragon Crest Shield. I wonder if there's any difference. No, it's just the type of damage it reduces. So this one more reduces fire damage. This one's magic. So 80 and 85. I do like the look of the Dragon Crest Shield much better. But we do have the Astora Straight Sword, which we are going to use after it's upgraded, but not right now. Straight Sword of an Unknown Knight, likely one of Astora's superiors. High quality weapon with a powerful blessing. And that powerful blessing is that it does divine damage. And so this is the weapon that we're going to use when we go to fight Nito, so that we can take care of the respawning skeletons in the boss room. So yeah, very cool. But yeah, I'm very grateful to Jerks Without Borders for pointing that out. I'm almost afraid to ask sometimes because, you know, I can come up with these really incredibly elaborate theories. And then, you know, if someone who knows both Japanese and English comes along and says, oh no, well actually, this actually, you know, the original usage was the kanji for this, which means that your theory is entirely unfounded. And so, yeah, I am occasionally anxious about that, but that's kind of the way it goes. You need to just roll with whatever the evidence is. But with that aside, we do have another comment from Jerks Without Borders, which this is the perfect context for. So you may remember that when we were in Blighttown, we picked up the Pyromancer set off of a corpse that I was really concerned was supposed to be Laurentius. And similarly, when we were in the Duke's Archives, we picked up some items off a corpse that I was really concerned was Griggs of Vinheim. And so on that subject, Jerks Without Borders writes, I'm fairly sure that actually, I'm not sure what that means. And the corpse is Laurentius, in the same way that you can find a corpse version of Dusk, Griggs, and possibly some other NPCs before they actually die. Because time is convoluted, we're seeing into Laurentius's potential future, where he heads down to the swamp and to find the forbidden pyromancies, meets NG, grabs a pyromancy from him, and then goes hollow while looking for Kaelana. So possibly, that the corpse we find that seems to be that of Laurentius, while Laurentius in our world is still alive. It's quite possible, time is convoluted, that is kind of a glimpse into Laurentius's future. But the problem I have with that is the lack of consistency. Because this is where, after we defeat the Four Kings with the help of, what's-her-face? Witch Beatrice. This is where her corpse will be. Why? We'll talk about that later. I don't really know, but we'll try to tease it out when the time comes. But even though, you know, she's still kicking as far as we're aware, there's no corpse there. The summoning bit I get. So like with Tarkus, he drops his summon sign, and even though he's technically already dead, you can summon him there. Although at the same time, you can't find your way to... Why am I bringing this back down? I thought we were going back to Firelink, but we're actually going to New Londo. But yeah, with Black Iron Tarkus, you don't find his corpse until after you complete the boss fight where you're able to summon him. So in that sense, time doesn't necessarily have to be convoluted, because quite simply he can help you with the boss fight and then die afterwards, and you would never know about it because you can't see summon signs after the boss is defeated anyway. But another example you raised is Dusk of Ulasil. And Dusk, her corpse doesn't show up until a very specific series, you know, a specific chain of events is completed, until all the conditions are met for her corpse to show up. And in that case, I totally buy the time is convoluted angle, because that whole thing is about time travel. So there's really not a problem there as far as I'm concerned. But with Griggs, I guess we'll wait. Oh, Titanite chunk on the very first Darkwraith we kill. That's beautiful. So I guess we'll wait with Griggs to figure that out. And what you've said, Jerks Without Borders, is entirely plausible within, you know, the lore and the mechanics of the game. But I don't know. I guess I just don't want to buy it. That doesn't mean that it's any less likely to be true just because I don't want it to be true. So I hope that we're clear about that. But it's very interesting nonetheless. And so with that, I'm actually caught up on all the comments. I needed that for the last several episodes. I've been saying, oh, I need to get caught up on the comments, but I'm not. And this thing here, I believe is called the Mass of Souls or something like that. Easiest way to deal with it is just poison it. It will take 2 rounds of poisoning, but there's such an enormous pain in the rear to deal with that it's not at all worth it, in my opinion, to even engage with them. So 6 cracked red eye orbs there, and this would be a good time to read the description for that, although I might have just aggroed another Darkwraith. So we'll deal with them first. Hi, friend. Gotta remember to not parry so dang early on that attack. Problem is I just spent so long farming the Silver Knights, and the parry timing is much earlier with them than it is with the Darkwraiths. The one attack of theirs I can parry pretty reliably is the running attack that they do, but I wasn't close enough there, so it wound up being just a partial parry. Okay. Cracked red eye orb. Online play item, invade another world. Defeat the master of the world you have invaded to acquire humanity. The cracked red eye orb allows players to temporarily imitate this ability, normally limited to the Darkwraiths of Cath. So Cath, of course, referring to Darkstalker Cath, the counterpart to Kingseeker Frampt. This is another Titanite chunk. So we've come down here, for one, to take care of the Massive Souls, because they're the only enemies here that don't respawn. So then that way I can farm this place off camera and you guys will not have missed anything. And the second reason is that we need to get our hands on the very large Ember so that we can upgrade weapons to +11 and beyond. And also just where, oh, I was about to ask where the Massive Souls were. I might see if I can brighten this up a little bit in post, because it's so incredibly dark on my screen. And I'm pretty sure, yeah, brightness is all the way up. But yeah, so Cath, of course, as I alluded to in the previous episode, because we spoke with Frampt, if you completely ignore Frampt, you can, and you don't place the Lord Vessel by yourself, you can gain access, and you defeat the 4 kings, then Darkstalker Cath will appear. But because we spoke with Frampt, that's not a possibility for us. And it's kind of a pain in the rear that they do that, but it's really cool at the same time that, you know, they're not afraid to have something that's so incredibly hidden in the game. So before we... Oh, thank you kindly, sir. There we go. Thank you kindly. That fog gate out there leads to right about where we were when we were dealing with the Undead Dragon, a little bit further down. But I'm not going to open it for now because it does... there are, I believe, 2 more Darkwraiths out there. And if you open that shortcut, then when you first enter this area, you have to deal with 2 Darkwraiths at once. So if I'm feeling especially confident with my abilities to take on the Darkwraiths, I will open that fog gate, but at this moment, it's been a while since I've actually farmed the Darkwraiths, so I don't want to take any chances, because we do just want to get the very large ember and then get out of here. We're not, the 4 kings, I believe, are going to be the last of the Lord Souls that we get our hands on, because we want to get the alternate cutscene for Sif. So yeah, I'm tempted to start blabbing on and on about the Darkwraiths, but we will be back to do just that. But in the meantime, I can't recall if there's a ghost against the wall here. Okay, I guess not. Yeah, it's kind of nice that once you've released the water, and once you've undone the flooding, I guess, of New Londo, you don't have to worry so much about dealing with the transient curse. I believe, is there a composite bow over here? No. There's a composite bow up here somewhere. I'm also surprised that we've been human this whole time and haven't been invaded once. Although I suppose this isn't the best place to invade, because you, of course, can't invade or engage in jolly cooperation until the floodgates have been opened. Very large ember acquired. Beautiful. That's wonderful. And there's an item that we can drop down to get somewhere around here, but I can't seem to recall. So next on our agenda for the next episode, the only thing on my list that we didn't get to in this episode, well, we have dialogue with Griggs and Logan, but we need to farm some souls in order to take advantage of that. But the broken pendant is the next thing. I haven't decided if we're going to go get the pendant and then just get out of there, out of the Duke's Archives, or if we're going to go on and do the Duke's Archives right then and there. But certainly I do want to get my hands on the broken pendant, because I want to start accumulating the sorceries of Dusk of Ulusil. But that's going to do it for this episode, so thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.